Hey guys, I'm Moises, and today I'm going to recap and review the very first episode of Season 2 of Westworld, the episode titled Journey into Night. So let's get right to it. So the show begins with Bernard talking with Dolores about dreams. And Dolores has a question. She asks, do dreams have any meaning? Bernard says, dreams don't mean anything. They're not real. To which Dolores replies, what is real? That which is irreplaceable. Now that answer does not satisfy Dolores, and Dolores isn't buying it. The answer doesn't satisfy her because it's not completely honest. And that answer frightens Bernard. He says, I'm frightened what you might become, what path you'll take. We then see a bunch of flashbacks of Bernard's of season 1. A lot of violence in those flashbacks too. We then cut to Bernard getting woke on a beach. You know, woke as in woken, waking up. And we hear a voice saying, hey, are you gonna shoot the boss? And we see that all these military people are on some beach and there's some kind of operation going on. We see Bernard get taken to some makeshift military base there on the beach. We then see a bald guy arguing with some Asian military dudes, and the bald guy is saying how he has authority over the island. And so there's like a little mini argument there. And this leads me to believe that Westworld is located, I guess, somewhere in Asia, because it seems the Westworld Corporation or the Delos Corporation bought the island from possibly an Asian nation. And so the bald guy is the one in charge of this whole military operation. He's basically the alpha, and he wants to get to the bottom of this. He wants to know, in his words, how this fucking mess began. Now, throughout this whole scene, Bernard is severely shook. He doesn't know what's going on, how all these dead hosts and humans are lying everywhere. Like, he's totally dazed and confused. And the bald guy, he wants to analyze one of the dead hosts. And he tells one of his techs, to analyze this dead Native American looking host. And so they do. They cut open its head and pull out what I think is a CPU, like the brain of a robot. And they hook it up to this iPad. And they go through the images, the last images that the host recorded. And they see that one of the last images is one of Dolores. It's basically Dolores killed that Native American host. And she says something really creepy. She says, not all of us deserve to make it to the valley beyond. And then she shoots him. The military guys ask, who is that? Who is that woman? And then Bernard snitches and says, that's the rancher's daughter. We then cut to another flashback, back to the massacre. And then we see some humans hiding, and they're hiding in a barn. And then one of the humans says this, he's like, they seem to be in a new narrative. And I'm like, yeah, no shit. While in the barn, Bernard and the humans see that this stable hand comes into the barn, and he's like a kid. He's a host, but he looks like a nice kid. And they're like, you shouldn't be scared of him. But the humans don't trust it, and they kill him. And during the altercation, we see that some weird goo starts coming out of Bernard's ear, which is like weird. From there, we cut to a scene where a piano is playing some music. You know, that it's playing that music that the ice cream trucks play. It's called The Entertainer. And from there, we see Dolores and Teddy on a killing spree. And they're just like loving to kill. And we see Dolores speaking to a man. And at this point, Dolores is like full on evil. It's like, who are you? You used to be so sweet in season 1. But Dolores says to the man, you're in a dream. You're in my dream, which is more like a nightmare. And she says, there's a price to pay for your actions. The reckoning is here. She calls them prisoners of her desires, and that these violent delights have violent ends. And she poetically says she has one last role to play. Myself. The humans cry and they plead, but Dolores coldly says, doesn't look like anything to me. And she just leaves them hanging, literally. We then cut to the man in the black hat, and we see him waking up. And then we see him kill some guys or hosts. And then he gets that black hat and he just puts it on his head. At the 32-minute mark, we finally see the Delos headquarters, and Maeve makes her first appearance. I love Maeve because she's so calm and powerful. And we see that all the hosts are under Maeve's control. But the British guy is there, you know, that British guy that's from season 1. And he's like, your controls don't work on me, but I can totally help you, don't kill me. And so Maeve is like, okay, maybe you can be useful. He tells Maeve that the map of Sector 15 is outdated, but he knows it, so he can totally help her find whatever she's looking for. We then see Bernard walking with other human survivors, and they see a Jeep off in the distance, and there's like a man in a hazmat suit, a white hazmat suit there, and they feel a sense of relief but they shouldn't because it's a trap. Don't go there. And they go there and they're ambushed. I literally yelled at the TV at that moment, don't go there, it's a trap, but they didn't listen. We then cut back to Maeve and Lee is saying how your host minds are worth millions in IP. IP means intellectual property. Lee tries to strike a bargain and says, I can save you like you saved me. And then the rescue team arrives and Maeve pretends to be human. She's a sneaky one. Then there's a firefight. And you know, guns and bullets are flying around everywhere. But of course, Maeve kicks ass because, you know, she's #awesome. After the fight, Maeve tells Lee that if he ever double crosses her again, that she will cut his most precious organ and feed it to him. We then see Maeve reunited with Hector in a tender moment of robot love. We then cut to Bernard and Charlotte finding a secret entrance to the Delos Corporation in the desert. Once we're in this secret area is when we see this new creature called a drone host. And that was like the creepiest part of the episode. I mean, those creatures have like no face, but they're all white, but they're kind of like muscular. They were so gross and creepy. I loved it. We also learned that Delos is logging and saving guest DNA. And I'm thinking that's going to be important later on. And it's totally like weird. We also see Charlotte trying to initiate a package extraction. We then learn that the Delos Corporation wants to secure one specific host. We then cut to the man in the black hat and he kills that kid robot. And he kills him after the kid says that you don't have to find the game finds you, playa. Oh, and at the 57-minute mark is when we see gratuitous male nudity. In the last scene where they show Teddy and Dolores, we see Teddy and Dolores having a conversation about their world, you know, our world, the real world, and how Dolores wants to take over their world. That means our world, you guys. We can't allow that. From there, we cut to Charlotte asking Bernard for help finding this specific host. And Bernard replies, yes, I think I can do it. I think we can do a subconscious link. Yeah, makes total sense, right? Bernard determines that Peter Abernathy is the target. We then see Bernard analyze himself with one of those iPad things, and we see that he has a critical corruption, and he's on some death protocol or death sequence, and he only has 0.72 hours to live. I think that means less than an hour, because I think an hour would be 1.0. And then we see Bernard inject himself with something that looks like propofol. From there, we cut to a scene of the massacre, you know, the massacre spot, and the bald guy asks Bernard if his memory's jogged. But Bernard just looks super confused. He's not really being very helpful. They then find a dead tiger on the Westworld property, and that's like very unusual because these animals never stray outside the parks. So it means there's like major malfunction in all the parks. So everything's going to hell. We then see one of the tech guys say that all the hosts are clustered together in this section. And so they go to that section and all the hosts are clustered together, but they're all like floating in this ocean that's not supposed to be there. So everybody's like confused and like, how did this ocean appear here? Like, how could nobody know that this was being made? And in the final scene, the bald guy asks Bernard, tell me what happened. And Bernard just replies, I killed them. All of them. And that's the end of episode 1. So I really loved the episode, and what I really liked was that they showed us all the characters, because a lot of times when a show comes back from one season to the other, we see only like maybe the main characters in the very first episode, but we saw all of the good characters. You know, we saw Maeve, we saw Dolores, we saw Teddy, we saw the man in the black hat, we saw Bernard, basically everyone. So they covered everyone, and I really like that. There was also a lot of action in this episode, so I think fans will be happy about that, because some people were saying that season 1 was too philosophical and not enough action, but this had plenty of action, so that should silence the critics. I'm looking forward to next week's episode, which I will also be reviewing, so come back next week for my review of episode 2 of Westworld season 2. I'm Moises Amaya, and I'm out.